Welcome to Inside Carolina's Day After podcast, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. As always, that's Buck Sanders, that's Jason Staples. I'm Tommy Ashley. Carolina 27, Syracuse 10, up in the Dome in Syracuse. Buck, we're talking about a P4 win here. A lot of good. Some caveats, but a lot of good to talk about this morning.
Absolutely. Of course, it didn't take much of an eye to see that Syracuse is not the most formidable team in the universe. But the thing that I keep going back to and thinking about this game is that North Carolina has played some teams that weren't great in the past. And I don't know exactly when they held another team to 147 yards total offense, but it's not been since 2016. I looked on the CFB stats. I can't find a game where they held anybody under 150 yards in at least 10 years. So, yes, it was quality of competition suffered a little bit up there in Syracuse. But North Carolina hasn't played this well defensively and haven't put together actually a complete game. It might be the way to think about it, like this one in a very long time. Just a complete game all the way around. They had some struggles getting the ball across the goal line in the first half. But after that, it was just a foregone conclusion how that game was going to play out from the beginning of the first half, the beginning of the second half to the end of the game. So it was a dominating performance, and that's what North Carolina needed to show headed into this home stretch.
Absolutely. Carolina gets the third win on the season, first ACC win, first P4 win. Jason, your overall thoughts before we dig into it. We banged on Gio Lopez a lot. He looked pretty solid last night. But your overall thoughts?
I said last week, it didn't look to me like Gio was really the problem last week and that there had been some progress made. And I thought he played really well. I'll just say this. I thought he played well relative to how he played the rest of the season and how the offense had looked the rest of the season. And, in this one, you kind of almost have to grade on a curve for how bad Syracuse is on offense right now. I mean, they were a completely different team with Angeli at quarterback earlier in the season, but defensively, they are the same team that they were earlier in the season. The same team that beat Clemson, the same team that's actually, managed to be competent against some other opponents. And North Carolina was able to move the football. I mean, they were in position to score 34 if they so wanted, right? And Belichick knelt down. He had him kneel inside the 10-yard line late in the game. So, the offense for the first time this season was on schedule against a Power 4 opponent, against a team that you hope to be on schedule against. So, and a lot of that was Lopez looking more comfortable. I do think some of that was due to the fact that there wasn't as much pressure on the offense in this game because the defense was giving up under 3 yards per play. And it was pretty obvious that, look, if you score 14 points in this game, it's probably going to be enough to win the game. So, I think that's part of it. But I think he found some comfort level. And he looked like he had more juice as a runner in this game to me than he had all the rest of the season. I don't know about you, but it looked to me like he felt more comfortable running the football than he had. And I think that's also a factor here. I do wonder how healthy he was early in the season, and maybe he's getting healthier as well. But I thought overall he played well. I thought the offensive plan was exactly what we talked about on the game plan, which was they probably aren't going to be able to score a lot of points. They ran it 43 times. Carolina ran it 43 times, and we were saying, run it 40, 45, 50 times if you can. Why? Because Syracuse is probably not going to be able to score a bunch on you. And so take the approach of playing conservative football, you're probably going to be able to bust a run or two because of the way that they struggle to tackle in the back end. And I thought in terms of, give Freddie Kitchens some credit as well. I thought in terms of what they did offensively, it made sense in terms of complementary football and in terms of what they were able to do. I think, and I also, we'll get to this, I know, but I think having Blaske at center in the second half also is a factor that helped them.
Yeah, I think that was a huge thing. Lindbergh went down with an injury at the end of the first half, I think. I'm not exactly sure the timing, but Blaske moved over there. But we'll stay on the offense here and talk about that first. A couple of things. Somebody in the chat said yards after contact had to be high. Well, June had
72 on one play.
Yeah, I mean, he had June had, well, a lot. A lot more than they have. I don't have the direct line right in front of me, but it felt like, to Jason's point on Gio Lopez, first play of the game was a scramble for however many yards, and then there was another couple runs in there where he put his head down to get more yards. We haven't seen that from him this year. I thought also that, to Jason's point, he was on schedule. I mean, Lopez, we've been critical of him. Jason has said, rightly so, that quarterback hadn't been the main issue, and I still have a beef with Freddie Kitchens' offensive play calling in the first half, especially down in the red zone. But if Lopez can produce this, if Lopez can produce these type performances, this offense can be more than serviceable, I think, especially with what's remaining. Your thoughts on Lopez' performance and all-around play calling and all the good stuff?
Well, I think relative to expectations headed into the game, certainly North Carolina exceeded those. In the game plan predictions, nobody predicted a 17-point win or North Carolina scoring over 20 points, really. Well, I think Tommy went to 32, yeah. But still, the margin of victory, I think Jason was the closest on 7 points and it ended up 17. So, and the Vegas line and all of that, everything that the advanced metric was telling us, North Carolina exceeded that. So, you got to take that for, face value, that they did play better than they were expected to play pretty much across the board. And they're to be commended for that. I think Jason's point about not getting a lot of pressure on the offense because of the way the defense was playing was the biggest factor probably in the game. And I'm going to say this about the defense, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and people's thoughts in the chat. This, to me, looks like a different level of defense than I have seen at North Carolina in a very long time. In terms of the quality of the defense and in terms of the execution of the defense. And they're doing it without a ton of Jimmys and Joes that are elite. So I think we're seeing something of the potential of a Belichick defense at a college program, because the defense is showing a different level, a different quality of defense than we've seen in a very long time. Granted, it was Syracuse. They were playing a walk-on true freshman. That wasn't going to end well regardless, but this is a different quality of defense that we're seeing at UNC right now.
My friend, we've seen third string, fourth string quarterbacks light it up before. Jason Buck took it to the defense. There's more offense I want to talk about, but let's talk about the defense here. They did what they were supposed to do. They got after Filardi. I mean, we talk about PFF grades kind of are what they are. Filardi's PFF grades will be one if you are him, you make sure they get deleted from the history books. But Carolina's approach to him, Belichick said you can't change the offense in 6 days. It didn't really matter who played quarterback. I was surprised Collins wasn't out there because he had legs. Filardi looked like he might have legs, but he had no shot. Just overall thoughts on Carolina's defensive approach. I mean, they are handling business regardless of the level of competition. They are handling business and doing what they're supposed to do. I entitled this show Smothers Syracuse. That's exactly what they did.
Yeah, I mean, yards per drop back. You're doing well on defense. I don't care if it's Buck's mother-in-law that's playing quarterback. It's yards per drop back, 1.77.
Have we seen that before? Not the Carolina defense.
I haven't. I can't. I don't have any recollection of Carolina giving up fewer than 5, even 4. I think it's somewhere around there. 5, I think, is the best I can recall. But about 4 yards per drop back, something like that, maybe the best that I can remember since we've been doing this. But 18 pass attempts for 39 yards, and remember, one of those was on one play, and it was a trick play. They had 25 yards.
He actually threw a seed on that one. That was a nice throw by him.
Good throw. They had that one throw on a trick play for 25 yards, and the remainder of the game was 3 completions of 8 yards, 4 yards, and 2 yards.
That's a heck of a performance. Like you said, it doesn't matter who's quarterback.
I mean, if Buck, you, and me were playing 3-headed quarterback against North Carolina, I think a couple of years ago, and you go back to Fedora's last year, I'm pretty sure we could have completed more than 4 passes for 39 yards against some of those teams. Even when you're playing against a true freshman walk-on who just isn't ready to play, you still have to cover. You still have to get pressure on the quarterback. You still have to do your job. And they did that. Now, the degree to which they smothered things was absolutely related to the ineptness of Syracuse overall. I mean, Syracuse's offensive line has had some injuries. They had another significant one in this one. And then the quarterback position is a mess. So they're not scoring a bunch of points on anybody, but Carolina's defense gave up 3. And they gave up 2 yards per play, 2.9 yards per play. If you do that against a Power 4 team with actual guys on scholarship in your own conference, you're doing real work. 147 total yards. I mean, that's a 1992 stat line. Back when everybody, back when teams were running power I and just bashing their head against the wall, that's what you'd expect. So, this was a solid performance, and I think the last couple weeks we've seen, I'd gone back to the Clemson game where I said there were some effort issues, but in terms of some other things, there had been some progress in terms of what we were seeing up front and all of that. And then last week we flagged it and we said, look, there's been more progress. Going back to the Cal game, there's more progress and more progress last week. Defensively, they just have continued to get better and better over the course of the season. And in this game, you really saw sort of what the vision is. We've talked about proof of concept. We've talked about what they want to do. This game, and against a team where they did, I think, have a personnel advantage, a pretty significant personnel advantage against Syracuse. But that's what you're hoping for. If you want to look at, okay, what's proof of concept of what the defense would look like against Power 4 teams if Belichick gets the kind of talent that they want to get at Carolina? This is that game. This is a game that shows how they would want to defend. So, there's a little bit of proof of concept. Like I said, you have to grade on a curve because of Syracuse's personnel issues, but nobody else had held them to, below 10 points defensively this season either. And, you say, well, that quarterback hadn't played up until now, but he played over the guy that had played the last couple of weeks for a reason. So take it for what it's worth. Do I think we're going to see another sub 3 yards per play performance this season? Probably not, but I do think that the second half schedule is a lot softer than the first half. And I don't think Carolina's playing another team that's as good as TCU or Clemson or, even Virginia's, one of the better teams that they'll play the remainder of the year. So, I mean, I think the rest of the schedule is going to be really interesting as you've seen some growth on this defensive side.
Buck, and shout out to Brian Evans in the chat. He took it where I was about to go. You got Marcus Allen. No flags, rightly or wrongly. I thought he played a great game and defended. Syracuse has got some tall, lanky receivers that can make some plays. And Carolina, I mean, Marcus Allen was right in the mix most all night. Your thoughts on his play and the back end?
Well, in my column today, if you've had a chance to read that, one of the things I flagged was that for the first time this year, Marcus Allen didn't get jobbed by the officiating crew. And you know, that he just played well, and he did what he needed to do. Anytime that Marcus Allen got into any sort of handsy situation with a receiver, he was always going to get the flag. And I just think that some players just develop a reputation of being guilty in those situations, and they're going to not get the benefit of the doubt. And Allen hasn't gotten the benefit of the doubt in the last 2-3 years, really. So good to see. Nothing really given up on the back end. But, you know, the more I thought about it this morning as I'm writing my article and going over things, at every level of the defense, you're seeing some stellar play. The edge rushers, Abu Jade and Tyler Thompson, have come light years since the beginning of the year. Abu Jade is now leads the league in sacks, and of course he's second in sacks per game because North Carolina at this point has played more games than some other teams. But, you know, for him to be who he is and who he's become the last couple of weeks is just amazing. And Tyler Thompson, I don't think we talk nearly enough about him, the way he's come on the last 3 games, really. You're seeing solid play at the linebacker position. You've seen some tremendous additions at safety, like Greg Smith and Gavin Gibson contributing, and with Allen doing his part, and Jaden Patterson filling in for, they lost our best defensive player in the secondary, and Jaden Patterson's done a marvelous job picking up that slack. The personnel at all 3 levels of the defense are playing at a level that is probably near their peak ability. And if you can get that out of your players, if you can get your players playing at the highest level of which they're capable of playing, and then you do bring in some real studs, what's the limit there? Where is the limit? So it is very encouraging to see that.
Talking with Buck Sanders, Jason Staples on the day after. Shout out Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. They are the places to go to get your Carolina gear on Franklin Street or online. 10% off your order if you're a premium subscriber. I'm going to throw the QR code in the top right of your screen. Take a picture of it. Do what you do with QR codes. You can go to Inside Carolina, sign up for the premium message boards there on the new On3 network. And, of course, that 10% off gets you Johnny T-Shirt gear. It's almost Christmas time, and they're always having sales. Johnny T-Shirt's your place to go for Carolina gear. Jason, let me ask a question, and I haven't prepped you, didn't tell you, but I feel like this defense, especially the back end, granted with some caveats, you don't ever want to lose your best player or your most highly rated NFL prospect or whatever. But when Dixon went out, it felt like this defense settled in a little more. Is that a fair assessment? He went out against Clemson or Virginia. When did he get hurt?
Went out against Clemson, and you know, I don't think that's exactly a fair assessment. I think the biggest difference has been level of play of the opposing teams.
Okay.
No, Jaden Patterson has been a revelation at that corner. I mean, he's played really good football. I mean, I think everybody should be pleased. And when you're watching the defense, it's worth taking some extra time to sort of focus in on number 18, because he's played well, but I think they would be that much better defensively if they still had Dixon, and then you could have Patterson playing. I mean, I think Patterson would be rotating in on the outside, or more likely would be actually the starting slot corner at this point, and they'd be that much better. And I do think, I mean, look, we need to be honest about what we saw last night. Filardi missed some open guys. I mean, there were guys that were running in space. There were guys that there were some openings on the back end, and he just flat out missed them. I mean, I'm thinking especially like there's the little hitch route on the outside where he just airmailed it. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's a terrible throw. So it's not like the secondary just completely blanketed everybody and there were no opportunities and they got a bunch of passes defensed and broken up. It's not that happened, but they played well enough that it was not that there weren't guys just running free where, you had a bunch of easy. They didn't make it easy on him. Let's just put it that way. And, that's an important part of this, that sometimes if you just, especially in college, if you don't make it too easy for the offense and you force them to have to execute, then this is what you get. Now, I think if they'd played exactly this well against TCU in the opener, they still probably get beat. They still probably give up, 20 some points and lose, because they're playing against a college, an NFL level quarterback, college all conference type quarterback, and a completely different level of play. I think they did play pretty close to this well against Cal, but Cal had a quarterback who is hot and cold instead of just flat out ice cold. So, I think there's been growth. I don't want to exaggerate that growth. And again, Patterson has been a revelation at corner. I think he's one of the biggest bright spots moving into next year. I think he's going to get himself paid and, be one of the cornerstones of the defense next year. I think they've made some real strides at across the board where you go, okay, a guy like Leroy Jackson, a guy like Abujade, those guys have continued to grow. There's guys in the secondary. I mean, we talked about Greg Smith last week. There's some young players that are really stepping into their own. And in that respect, I agree with you that the defense, certain guys have found their feet, and the defense has taken significant strides as guys understand their roles within the larger defense. But I don't think that this is a matter of like, oh, they lost Peyton Manning and replaced him with T. Martin, and now they win the national title. Sometimes, you just need to be, if you lose your best guy, it actually ends up galvanizing. I don't really think that was the case. I think the biggest factor on the back end there is just they have not played the same level of threats in the secondary that they did over the first month and a half of the season.
Yeah, 100% valid there. I think the point you made there earlier about guys knowing their roles and having comfort in their roles is kind of the angle I was looking for there. Buck, anything left on the defense? Because I do want to bounce back to the offense after the break, and we can even talk special teams because I know you're a special teams guy. But last remaining thoughts on the defense. If you're looking at PFF, Isaiah Johnson graded out the highest, Caleb Koss second, Greg Smith, Marcus Allen, and McCoy, and then Jason's guy Leroy Jackson was sixth on the team in there. And I really liked seeing guys like Isaiah Johnson and Mims and those guys going against 400-pound guards. Syracuse had a little bit of success when that guy was going forward, but it was battling some size on the interior that Carolina was able to handle there. But last thoughts on defense.
Well, you hit on it exactly, Tommy. We talked about it at the beginning of the year that the weak spot of this defense on paper at that time appeared to be the interior line positions. And we talked about that over and over and over again. Well, Mims and Johnson and Jackson and that whole crew has really stepped up, and they're doing more than holding their own on the interior of that line. They can collapse the pocket. at times. They're very sure-handed tacklers at the line of scrimmage. So that the interior of that line has done a really amazing job, I think. And I still maintain that across all three levels of the defense, they're playing very well right now. Now, granted, we can talk about the competition, but that all three levels of the defense, the last three games really, and we talked about how they made this quarterback look bad. Well, they made two pretty good quarterbacks look bad as well the last two games.
Pressure will do that.
So that's not just a function of this quarterback is just terrible. It's just North Carolina is helping him look terrible into the bargain. So that's something we also have to factor into it.
Yeah, a lot goes into it, and you only play who's on your schedule. So, and like I've said, we have seen this team this year not play good against bad teams. And so the progress is real. The progress is caveated and all that. But the bottom line is you hold a college team to 3 points, you've done pretty well. That's Buck. That's Jason. Again, Johnny T-shirts, the sponsor. I do want to flip back to the offense with you, Jason. And you mentioned this in the early, and I think it was hugely relevant, is getting Blaske back at center. I know Belichick after the game said didn't have to do it that way or whatever he said because Lindbergh got dinged up. But it was a noticeable difference on a variety of reasons seeing Blaske back at center, whether it's getting the ball back on time, whether it's calling the protections, whether it's getting everybody in the right spot. I thought that was maybe the biggest thing that's come out of this game, if it carries forward, which it needs to. But your thoughts on that change and the way that impacted the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think my suspicion, actually, I was starting to wonder early in the game whether Lindbergh was already sort of feeling a little bit dinged early in the game. It looked to me like he wasn't moving his one shoulder as well early in the game as he had earlier in the year. So I was kind of watching that for a little bit. And then when he went out, I don't remember what he went out for, but when he went out, it was like, okay, I wonder. But I thought, I did think Blaske looks a lot more comfortable at center just in terms of him as a player. But this is where I think Jordan Hall coming in for 46 snaps at left tackle and playing as well as he did. It wasn't just Blaske going to center. It was the combination of the two because Hall looked really good out there. Now, how much of that is just match up against the guy that he was going up against for Syracuse, and will that carry forward against a different type of player in the next game? We don't know. But, Jordan Hall was a guy that wasn't really expected to play this year, right? You're looking at a guy that he's the fourth offensive tackle at that left tackle spot that they've tried, right? They started with the freshman whose name is escaping me right now.
Aiden Buchanan.
Yeah, Aiden Buchanan. And then they went to two or three other options there, and then finally settled on Blaske there. And then finally in this game, when Blaske moved inside, they moved to Jordan Hall. And Hall, the thing with Hall, at least, that you see is the length and the movement skills are what we thought they were when we evaluated him in the summer. He's a good athlete, and that came out pretty clearly. That's right. Boone was used there as well. Boone was the second guy that came in. So and then I think there was one other that they put there before Blaske got there. So they've just been trying to mix and match to try to figure out how they can do what they need at the center and left tackle spots. And last night in the second half, with Blaske at center and Hall at left tackle, that was the best combination in terms of overall performance that they've gotten all season. And, that's something to keep an eye on. I mean, can Jordan Hall continue to play at that level? Can he continue to play like that at left tackle? And then, pass blocking wise, he was really good. He's still got a little bit of work to do in terms of power in the run game, but then again, Pro Football Focus grades are tongue in cheek. You take him with a grain of salt, but I don't think it's inaccurate to say that his 82.8 grade on pass blocking is I mean, that accorded with what my eyes saw pretty well. So if you get that out of him, then that really helps your offense, because Blaske is your best center. And if you're going to get good left tackle play on top of that out of a guy like Hall, now you've been pretty good at right tackle. I mean, I know against Virginia, Ja'Kai Moore struggled, but that's probably the best defensive end that they'll play all season, for the remainder of the season. So the rest of the season, he's been probably their most consistent offensive lineman. And you start to look at the total composition of 5 with where they're at now. This could work, maybe. But I thought the offensive line on the whole played pretty well in this game. And then Gio Lopez helped them be right in some of the cases where things broke down a little bit. There were a few places where he was able to escape, use his legs, do some things where and Syracuse is a heavy pressure team, as we talked about. They like to bring a lot of players from the second level, and Carolina did a great job of burning those blitzes by getting to that second level with quarterback draws, with quarterback scrambles when he recognized pressure and was able to escape, with some screen stuff. The one screen that went long was against one of those looks, and then they also hit it in the teeth with a couple run plays. So none of that happens without the offensive line playing reasonably well, and I do think Blaske being at center was really helpful in the second half.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the importance of timing and all, and snapping and everything like that, and we saw it. I mean, we've seen it. Buck, your thoughts on the offensive line play? I mean, the trenches is where this team, especially under Bill Belichick, is going to get their bacon, and they're figuring out the defensive line. This offensive line, to Jason's point, you mix and match all season. This looks like it could be the best bunch, the best group of 5 they have. Your thoughts? And then I do want to talk about how we said Lopez made them look good. Also, June made them look good with some of the plays that he made. But your thoughts here, Buck?
You went there right before I was going to jump in on you, but the Damon June factor and the Jordan Shipp factor. Having Jordan Shipp out there, being available to catch the passes like he caught there in the second half, and you love to see that, and you think that it's not just the offensive line, but the entire offense is functioning well if your difference makers on the team are making a difference. That's showing you that you're doing the offense right, is your difference makers are making a difference. And Shipp made a difference, and June obviously made a difference. You like to see that when your best players are having some success on the field. I think that's an indication that you're headed in the right direction. But I think that perhaps more so than any other group of staff I've ever seen, this staff is not, they didn't rush to, okay, who are our best 5 players, and we're just going to stick them out there regardless of what happens from here on out. No, that they are evaluating, judging, tweaking, and making changes on the offensive line based on what they're seeing in practice. And they're earning their money working with that offensive line. I do agree that Blaske's a great benefit of having him in the center of that line, but there's just been a difference in how this staff has approached the offensive line than I've seen other staffs do it. Typically, they lock in on 5 players. Unless somebody gets hurt, those guys are going to play every snap. So it's been different, and it's been encouraging.
That catch Jordan Shipp made on the sidelines there, laying out, I mean, that was impressive. And they used him in the jet sweep game there for 7 yards. Jason, let's talk about the red zone play calling in the first half. People told, huh? Yes,
Must we?
because this is where I think offensive line play, Gio Lopez play, Blaske play can make a difference here. I don't understand it. I tweeted about it. Of course, people tweet at me in the morning saying they're tired of this shtick, banging on Kitchens. Games are 4 quarters, da-da-da-da. Tweets are for a moment in time. But, Jason, your thoughts here. I mean, this should be very correctable, in my opinion. But your thoughts on what you saw specifically in the first half?
Well, I think there are different approaches to red zone. And I remember when Mac brought in Kitchens and that new staff, partly because, or one of the reasons that he went and he got those guys is that he was dissatisfied with the red zone performance. You remember that? I mean, that was one of the talking points a couple of years ago under Phil Longo, is they move the ball between the 20s and then you get in the red zone and then, everything tightens up and you didn't have as much success. And Mac really wanted to go and get somebody who was going to be able to punch it inside the red zone. And Kitchens was one of the guys that they brought in as a part of rectifying that. And one of the things that came up at the coaching clinic that year is that they were of the belief that you don't want to change too much. Like if you have to change what you're doing inside the red zone, then you're not really doing the right stuff all the time. That's one philosophy of approaching red zone stuff is, you're basically just, it's the same stuff you're doing between the 20s, but more of it kind of thing. The other approach is that when you get down into those premium yards where things compress, when things get tight, that's when you need to carry some wrinkles. That's when you need to carry some extra stuff just to be able to get something cheap. And, I think in general, Carolina this season has been in a spot where they've just tried to play kind of standard football inside the 10-yard line. And by and large, they haven't had a lot of answers because, one of the things that some coaches have told me, and, I've experienced when I was coaching myself, when it gets real compressed, when it gets tight down in the red zone and the offense doesn't have the numbers anymore, because normally you have the numbers offensively because they've got to have a deep safety or two. And so, you run the quarterback, all of a sudden you're one up. There's just different things. The defense is a little bit at a disadvantage near the line of scrimmage in the middle of the field because they have to cover the deep zones. In the red zone, all of a sudden that stuff disappears, and that's why things get real tight. And, what you hear coaches say is in the red zone, that's when things get tight, that's when you need to have somebody who is special enough to win one-on-ones. You got to have somebody who goes out there and just kicks somebody's tail. Whether that's a wide receiver who's uncoverable in one-on-ones and you just throw it up to him. That's the cheapest and laziest version. Right? I mean, that's what you want. If you got Megatron or you got Randy Moss, things get easier down there. If you've got Gronkowski, things get easier down there. If you don't have one of those guys, you've got to find ways to generate advantages in the numbers and all that. And some of that's with formation stuff. Some of it's with tempo. Some of it is with, little wrinkles of, okay, you're going to show, go belly and then toss and try to get the perimeter on somebody. There's a number of things that you can try to do. And what I've seen is that they just really haven't tried to do a lot of that to this point. They're just, they line up and they run the football. They throw, mesh, or they throw, they're doing the same stuff that they do in the middle of the field. And when it's getting tightened up, they just aren't dominant enough to be able to mash it in down there. And, they're close. They've been real close. I mean, the first drive down into the red zone, they probably score, and then they get a false start from Blaske, and that's it, right? But they had an opportunity on 4th and 1 to potentially knock it in. But you don't want to have to get to that 4th and 1, right? So the one thing, that's one of the things that if I'm Belichick, I'm looking at, potentially trying to do moving forward the rest of the schedule is, all right, we're going to have, let's say we get down into the red zone. We need to carry like 4 or 5. Normally you carry 1 or 2, like 2-point plays that are like, this is your go-to. And by the way, the 2-point play that they used last week against Virginia wasn't one of those types of plays that I would have as a designated like special 2-point play. But normally you carry like 1 or 2 of those into each game. Maybe you carry 4 or 5 for goal line purposes, given the struggles that you've had. Maybe you try to grind out 1 or 2 extra ones, 3 extra ones just to have them. That's the sort of thing that I'm looking at. But so much of the red zone just forces you to execute at a level that you don't have to otherwise, because you lose the numbers and they're just not quite good enough yet to be able to do that with base stuff.
I mean, it's 1st and goal at the 3. Run the football. I mean, that is my thing. To your point, have designated plays, but just run the football, especially when you're getting some push at times. But at any rate, I think those options might change now that the offensive line is certainly changed. But final thoughts on the offensive side of the ball here. I think Gio Lopez much more comfortable. We've hammered on him. We got to talk about his game. I mean, you can't get much better than 15 for 19, 79% completion rating, 209, or completion percentage 209, 2 tutties, one nice scramble to open the game, and no interceptions. I mean, the young man played as well as he could in that game. But final thoughts on the O, Buck?
I think you covered the waterfront there on Lopez. One of the thoughts I've had while we're been in this podcast is that last week we were talking about how Kobe Pursuer stretched out and tried to make a play and tried to do too much, and that's what kind of cost North Carolina that game. Is if had he just gone out of bounds at the 1-yard line, they could have punched it in. And on that 4th and 1, it was or that 1st and goal and 3. It was Pursuer who got stopped short of the touchdown. He didn't try to do too much in that instance. Still didn't help him out because of the penalty, but I think that may have been a learning experience for him last week in terms of not trying to do too much and ending up costing the team. But Lopez deserves a lot of credit. He has certainly worked at his game. It's interesting to see players that, so many times you see a player spiral downward and they can never recover. And it's much more rare, I think, to see someone pull out because we saw some performances from Lopez earlier in the year that were just abominable. And to see him have a game like he had yesterday is very encouraging, and it just shows you that hard work and dedication can help you get ahead in life, and that's what he's done on this team. Let's see how it plays out over the rest of the course of the season. If they can get that same kind of level of play out of Lopez, they're going to have some chances to win some games down the stretch.
Yeah, and I want to get Jason's thoughts here on confidence and finally proof of concept we mentioned earlier, and players getting some reward for the work. And I think that's what wins are, is their rewards for the work they put in. And to see those guys, see Belichick smiling in a post-game press conference, to see the locker room like it was, to see all those type things, Jason, how important is that for these players? It's all about the kids. How important is that? But also, the coaching staff and everybody around the program. I can tell you that it is a lot more pleasant when you win, whether or not you coach to win.
Understatement of the show.
Whether or not you coach to win or you coach to the process, it is more pleasant when you win. And it clearly showed on the faces of these young men, especially what we've seen the last couple of weeks. Confidence and all that stuff, Jason. Yeah, I don't think you can overstate how important it is, especially for a bunch like this Carolina team.
You ever been hungry at a nice restaurant that you go to an event or something where you're there for the meeting part of the restaurant stuff, but it's a nice restaurant. You're there, you're hungry, and you smell that food, but you can't afford it. So you sit there and you don't pay for it. I've done this. I've done this more than once where I'm just sitting there and I'm the one person not eating. You're there. It's nice. It's like, man, this would be really good to get that. Kind of looking and hoping that somebody will maybe offer you a piece of their appetizer or something. I've been there. That's what doing all the work and focusing on the process is when you don't get the results. It's nice to be a part of the circle that you can go to and have that meeting and, be a part of that. But if you don't get to eat the food, it's not real pleasant. When you finally get to order that food and you're like, I can, you know what? I'm hungry and I can go ahead and eat with y'all. There's something about that. That's what you're looking at. You finally are getting the reward for all the work you put in. And instead of sitting there and just smelling it and going, oh man, I know what this would be like, man, I've been putting in that work. It would be great to just be able to have that food. And then all of a sudden you get food. One of the next things you go is like, you know what? Next time I go to that restaurant, I'm going to eat again. I got to make sure I'm working harder to be able to eat when I go to the restaurant the next time. That's what this is. And so, the other part about it, you mentioned confidence. We talked about that all last week about how, the lose close phenomenon, you start to believe that maybe you're getting there. And then if you can get to where you win close, now you really believe like we're doing the right things and you double down on that. And the next step after that is knowing. You don't just believe, you can do it. And, you stop trying, it's the Yoda thing, do or do not, there is no try. You have to get to that spot by, you try and you try and you try until you realize, no, I just got to do this and I can do this. I know I can do this because I've done this. That's the next step. And you kind of have to break through to get there. And when the dam breaks, sometimes it really breaks. Sometimes you actually see teams go on a run or a tear, and it can go the other way. You lose. I mean, again, look at Tallahassee. They win 13 games in a row. Actually, they won 20 games or 19 games in a row. Go 13-0 in the regular season. They get snubbed from the playoff. They get blown out in the postseason exhibition, and then the next year, the confidence level, the swagger. I hate that word, but the swagger, the confidence level that they were playing with of total belief in what they were doing, just wasn't there. And they've been a much more fragile program. It can go either way. You start to lose. That team beat Alabama this year. Alabama might be the best team in the country, and now they're on a 4-game losing streak. You kind of get knocked off, and it was an overtime loss against Virginia. What happens if they win that game against Virginia? Do they go on that 4-game losing streak? It takes, things are so marginal in college football to where just a little bit of the wrong thing, you come to doubt yourself a little bit after, an overtime loss or something happens. And then all of a sudden you go on a slide. Maybe you get a dominant win and you're like, that's what that feels like. And you go out and you do it again. And they've got an opportunity against, a Stanford team that's not exactly a world beater this next outing. They've got an opportunity to build on this and maybe they can get moving with some sort of streak.
It's crazy how it works. It's crazy how the importance of quarterback play is. Look at Syracuse and how that works. I mean, to your point, college football lives in the margins, and you gotta clean the margins up to be able to have some success. Carolina gets the win 27-10. I do find it interesting, and I remembered it, but Ben pointed it out in our community Slack is Carolina won 27-10 in 1996. I was at a friend's house watching that game because we had no power because Hurricane Fran had destroyed our neighborhood. And Fran Brown is currently at Syracuse. It makes you think. Makes you think. That's Buck Sanders. That's Jason Staples. Buck, anything left? Shout out to Tom McGinnis, punter. Average 43.8, long of 50, one inside the 20. He's doing his job. Reese Verhoff, perfect on extra points and field goals. And Carolina did not return a kick from the 2-yard line and start inside the 20. There's improvement there. Didn't have to do it much on Friday night, but anything is better than what they had been doing on kick returns. Go Buck. Anything left? I'm getting out of here.
The only thing I have left is I'm just curious as to you two and everybody else out there. What's your feeling about Friday night football?
I didn't
Jason
like
says,
it.
I like it better than I thought I would.
Well, it helps when it's good football, but I like it in the sense that it leaves your weekend, your Saturday open, and it feels like Sunday becomes more of a day of rest or whatever for people that cover it. But I don't like it because I don't get to go see Clayton kick Cleveland's butt last night because I was watching that.
Yeah,
and
the high school angle is
That's why I say it's a no, because when I was coaching high school and there was a Friday night game, it's like, man, like, you know, a bunch of our guys might have wanted to watch. I might have wanted to watch that as a coach. And if you're trying to recruit as a program, it's not great exposure when the guys you're recruiting aren't watching your game or aren't seeing what you're doing in that case. So yeah, I'm not as big a fan. By the way, how many times does Carolina leave the state for the remainder of the season?
0. There's an opportunity here. Somebody said 8-5 still on the table. Just be 1-0 next week should be the mantra for Carolina. Stanford comes to town at 4:30 on the CW. Fits into Tantrums is the concert on the green at or in the quad at Carolina. I can't say I've ever heard of them, but have to check it out. Stay tuned to Inside Carolina for all the complete coverage here. Bucks columns. What you got, Jason?
Last question for both of you.
Uh-oh.
What odds do you put on Carolina being bowl eligible at this stage of the season? Okay, I'm going to give you even odds. Which one are you taking? You going bowl eligible or not?
I'd probably say not.
I would say not right now. At this moment, this speck in time, I'd say no. Is it out of the question? Is it out of the question? No, not at all. But, they've got some, I think, more to prove before I would say, yeah, they're going bowling.
You need to go 3 out of 5, right?
You got to go. Yeah, you got to go 3 out. You got to beat one of State or Duke to get bowl eligible. They're 3-5 right now. You got to beat one of State or Duke, and you got to beat Wake. And Wake at Wake's always been for some reason, a crazy nightmare. Except 1 or 2 times out of as long as I can remember. So, got a lot to do. Certainly doable. Certainly different than what we were talking about 3 weeks ago. After
crazy
Clemson.
Thing is, Carolina's about half a yard from being 3-1 in the ACC right now.
Yeah, but they keep score for a reason, and they don't change the score for what coulda, shoulda. And it's like you said, it's the margins, man. You live in the margins, and it's kind of like NCAA basketball champions, right? There's always that one game where they found a way to win, and Carolina, maybe they figured it out now, but they've put themselves against the wall bowl eligible. And I really don't think bowl eligibility matters.
It matters because you get the extra practices.
That certainly is one point that matters. But as far as to say you played in a bowl,
not important. But 15 extra practices under this staff matters a whole lot.
Yeah,
and so getting the bowl eligibility for that 15 extra practices, that's like another spring practice. You're getting an opportunity to improve, and we've seen this team improve over the course of the season. you get an extra 15 practices to continue to improve, and they're going to be better. So, I think that's the thing. But yeah, you got to go 3 out of the next 4 games. Stanford, Wake Forest, Duke, and NC State. Now, you don't leave the state with any of those, so I'm probably with you guys, but it's starting to look more possible than it did 3-4 weeks ago.
That I'll agree with. It's certainly looking more possible.
100%. Shout out to Buck. Shout out to Jason. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt. Shout out to the 500-plus people that were in here for the duration on a Saturday morning, the day after Carolina 27, Syracuse 10. Like I said, next week, Carolina Stanford, and then Carolina Wake, and then Carolina Duke, and then Carolina State. Can't ask for, you throw Stanford in, an ACC rival Stanford, and then you play the
famous Atlantic Coast resident Stanford.
This is
at least it won't be a Pac-12 after dark game.
Jeez,
one of those is enough.
But it is on the CW, so stay tuned to that. Stay tuned to Inside Carolina. Like I said, subscribe. Go to the QR code to the top right, or go InsideCarolina.com. Get your subscription. Join the fun. We'll see you guys again soon.